He told me I'd been letting myself go. Not in a kind way, not in a, hey, I'm worried about us way. He said it the way you'd say something about a car that needed new tires, flat, practical. Like it was just a fact he was reporting, and my feelings about it were frankly not his problem. I was 31 years old, standing in our kitchen in Portland, holding a dish towel, and my husband of 4 years looked at me across the island we picked out together at IKEA and said, "You've just been letting yourself go, Mara." I don't know what else to say. I didn't say anything back. I folded the dish towel, set it on the counter, and I thought, okay. Let's see where this goes. I want to be clear about something before I get into all of it. I was not naive. I was not a pushover. I had a master's degree in urban planning, a job I'd worked hard for with the city, and I'd put us both through some very lean years when my husband, whose name is Hollis, was doing his residency at OHSU. I cooked. I paid bills when his student loans meant we were technically underwater. I drove 40 minutes each way to work so we could afford a house in the neighborhood he wanted, because the school district mattered to him, and I thought it mattered to me too. So when I say I didn't see it coming, I need you to understand that's not the same as being oblivious. I was busy. There's a difference. The first sign, the one I told myself wasn't a sign, was the gym. Hollis had never been a gym person. He'd joke about it, say he got enough physical activity chasing patients around the ER, and then, one January, he joined a CrossFit gym in the Pearl District, 40 minutes from our house in the opposite direction of the hospital. He started going before shifts. I thought it was good. I thought it was a midlife crisis at 34 kind of thing, and I was genuinely glad he was taking care of himself. He lost 15 pounds by March. I told him he looked great. He did not say the same to me. I noticed small things after that, the kind of things you file away somewhere quiet in your brain, not because you want to, but because your body knows before your brain does. He started using a different cologne. He'd always worn the same one, a cedar and sandalwood thing I'd bought him our first Christmas. Now it was something sharper, cooler, a little expensive. I didn't ask. I told myself maybe it was a gift from a colleague. Maybe he just wanted a change. He started showering immediately when he got home. Not after dinner, not before bed. The second he walked through the door. Every single night, I started paying attention. There was a woman in his department. I found out later her name was Zara. She was 26, a travel nurse who'd come in on a 6-month contract in February. I didn't know any of this in real time. All I knew was that Hollis had started being vague about his schedule in a way he'd never been before. He used to text me when his shift ended. Then he stopped. He used to tell me who he'd worked with, what the day had been like. Not in detail, just in the way married people talk to fill the car ride or the dinner. That stopped too. In April, he told me he didn't want to have sex anymore. Not like that. Not in those words. What he said was that he'd been really depleted lately and he needed some space to figure out some things. I asked him what things. He said he didn't know. I asked if he wanted to talk to someone, a therapist, both of us together. He said he'd think about it. He did not think about it. He did not think about it. I want to tell you that I handled this moment with grace and clarity, but I didn't. I handled it the way most people handle a quiet catastrophe. I went into problem-solving mode. I started cooking the dinners he used to love. I bought new clothes. I made reservations at a restaurant in the West Hills that had a 3-week wait, and when we went, he checked his phone 4 times during appetizers and told me he was tired before we finished the main course. I wore a dress that had taken me a week to find. He didn't mention it. That was the night something shifted in me, not dramatically, not a sudden clarity, more like the way a room gets cold so slowly you don't notice until you realize you haven't been warm in a very long time. I started noticing things he didn't know I was noticing. He'd started using his personal cell phone for everything now, and he tilted the screen slightly away when I walked by. I wasn't snooping, I just walked by. I noticed. He started coming home later from shifts that, according to the hospital's publicly posted ER schedules online, should have ended an hour before he arrived. He had a work trip to a conference in Seattle in May. I looked up the conference later. It was 2 days. He was gone for 4. I didn't confront him. I knew, on some level, that I needed to be smart about this. I'd read enough about divorce to know that the person who reacts first often loses. So I called my sister instead. My sister's name is Portia, and she is one of those people who seems to have been born with a kind of pragmatic ruthlessness that I completely lack. She's an accountant. She thinks in systems. When I told her what I'd noticed, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Do you want to feel better right now, or do you want to actually fix this?" I said, "Fix it." She said, "Then don't say a word." Not yet. She walked me through what she knew, not from personal experience. Portia has been married 11 years to a man who still leaves her notes on the coffee maker. But from the general architecture of these situations, she said, document everything quietly. See a divorce attorney before he knows you're looking, and understand the finances completely, because if there's something hidden, you need to know about it before a lawyer does. I started with the finances. Hollis and I had always kept mostly separate accounts with a joint one for the house. It had seemed modern, reasonable. Now I opened that joint account on my laptop and sat with it for a long time. There was nothing obviously wrong, but I pulled 3 years of statements and started going through them, and I found something. A recurring charge to a hotel in the Pearl District. Every month since February. Small enough to look like nothing. Not small enough to be nothing. I took a screenshot. I kept going. I made an appointment with a family law attorney named, I won't say her name, but I found her through a friend, and she was one of those women who has seen every version of this story and has the calm of someone who has stopped being surprised by human beings. She looked at what I'd brought, the financial records, the dates, the hotel charges, and she said, "You've done the hard part. Most people come in here with nothing. You have a picture." She told me not to move money, not to change anything he could see, not to react. She said, "Let him think he's invisible. People who think they're invisible get sloppy." He got sloppy in June. I came home from work on a Tuesday and found a receipt in his jacket pocket. I wasn't searching his jacket. I was moving it from the chair to the hook by the door because he always left it on the chair, and it drove me a little crazy. It fell out. I picked it up. A restaurant in the Pearl District, a weeknight, a table for two, $180, before tip. I had been home that night with leftover soup and a work presentation. I photographed the receipt. Put the jacket on the hook. Made dinner. That night I went into the garage and cried for about 11 minutes, which felt like both an eternity and a very insufficient amount of time for the situation. Then I went back inside and washed my face and watched television and went to bed. The next morning I called my attorney. Here's what I want to say about the 3 months between that call and the moment I handed Hollis the divorce papers. I became someone I didn't fully recognize. Not in a bad way, in a very quiet, very focused way. I started working with a financial advisor, someone my attorney recommended, separate from any accounts Hollis knew about, to understand exactly what I was entitled to. In Oregon, marital assets are subject to equitable distribution. We'd bought our house 2 years into the marriage. Its value had gone up significantly in the Portland market. There was also his pension, his 401k, the joint savings. My attorney walked me through every piece of it. I also transferred a portion of my own paycheck into a personal account I opened at a different bank. This was not hiding money. This was money from my own salary that I was legally entitled to access. My attorney confirmed it. I needed a financial cushion that was mine alone. In August, I also started therapy. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters. Not because I was falling apart, but because I needed someone to help me hold all of this. My therapist, who I will call Dr. B, had the gift of not letting me pretend I was fine when I wasn't. She said something in our second session that I still think about. You've been managing his emotional world so well that you stopped managing your own. I had. I didn't realize how much until she said it. During all of this, Hollis thought nothing had changed. This is the part that genuinely astonishes me in retrospect. He came home every night, later and later, but home. We talked about small things. He asked about my work project. I asked about the hospital. We lived like two people who had agreed to maintain the performance of a marriage without discussing what was underneath it. I was good at the performance. I had, after all, been doing it for months before I even understood that's what it was. September came. My attorney said we were ready. On a Wednesday evening, not for drama, just because that's when it was ready. I sat down across from Hollis at the kitchen island. The same island where he told me I'd been letting myself go. I put the folder on the counter and slid it toward him. "What is this?" he said. I told him it was a petition for dissolution of marriage. I told him I'd retained an attorney. I told him he had 30 days to respond. He stared at the folder. Then he looked at me. "Mara, I also have documentation of the hotel charges going back to February," I said. "The restaurant in June. The conference that was 2 days, not 4. I don't want to litigate this. I want this to be straightforward, but I need you to understand that I'm not unprepared." He sat down. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he said, I was going to end it. With her. "Okay," I said. Can we talk about this?" "We can talk about the settlement," I said. "My attorney's contact information is on the back page." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm out. He just sat there looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, and I realized that I had been expecting to feel something enormous in this moment. Relief or grief or rage, and instead I mostly felt clear. Like the room had been cleaned out. I went to my sister's that night and ate an entire order of pad thai and told her everything and cried twice and laughed once about something completely unrelated. It felt like the first real night I'd had in 8 months. The divorce process in Oregon has a mandatory 90-day waiting period after filing before it can be finalized. We filed in September. By December, everything was settled. Hollis got his car, his personal accounts, and his half of the joint savings. I got a buyout of his share of the house, which meant I stayed. I got a fair portion of his pension value because that had been built during the marriage. Our attorneys handled most of it without us in the same room, which was, honestly, a relief. There's something I heard from a friend later. I don't know how she knew, and I stopped asking people to explain how they know things. That Zara, the travel nurse, had ended her contract in November. Gone back to Texas or Arizona, somewhere with sun. Hollis had apparently not seen that coming. I would be lying if I said I didn't feel something about that. Not pleasure, exactly. More like the satisfaction of a pattern resolving the way you knew it would. The thing about people who pursue unavailable partners is that they're often in love with the pursuit. Once the thing is achieved, the thing looks different. I'd learned that in therapy. Dr. B had said it matter-of-factly, the way she said most things, and I'd written it in my journal because it felt true. By January, I had repainted the bedroom. Not because he'd ever picked the color, I had, actually, but because I wanted the room to look different when I woke up in the morning. I went with a warm terracotta that my sister said was a little aggressive and I said was exactly right. I also finally used the guest bathroom as a real room, not just storage. I bought a chair I liked. I put books on a shelf that had been empty for 2 years. I started working on a longer project at work that I'd been putting off because Hollis had never seemed interested in my work in the way I think I needed him to be. That sounds small. It isn't. When the person you live with treats your professional life as a pleasantry, nice to hear about, ultimately not important, you start, slowly and without noticing, treating it that way yourself. I stopped doing that. In February, I went to see a friend in Chicago for a long weekend. I ate a deep dish pizza in the cold and walked along the lake and felt, very simply, like myself. It had been so long since I'd felt like myself that I didn't recognize it at first. I thought I was just having a nice trip. My attorney sent me a note when everything was finalized. It was professional, brief, and kind. She said a version of something I'd thought about since, that the work I'd done before I filed, the documentation, the financial preparation, the patience, had protected me better than most people protect themselves in these situations. Most people react, she said. You planned. I don't say that to be proud of it. I say it because I think it matters for anyone going through something like this. Reacting feels good in the moment. It gives you back a sense of control. But it often costs you the actual control. The control that shows up in bank accounts and settlement terms and the house that you get to stay in. There are things I miss about the marriage. Not about Hollis, exactly, but about the person I was in the early years of it, when I still believed we were building something real. I was hopeful then. I made elaborate dinners on Tuesday nights just because I felt like it. I made plans. I still make plans. They're just mine now. I'm not telling you this story because I have a lesson wrapped up neatly at the end. Life doesn't do that. What I have is this. I'm 32 years old. I live in a house I love in a city I love, and the bedroom is terracotta now, and my sister calls every Sunday and I eat dinner when I want to, and where I want to, and sometimes I eat cereal standing over the sink, and it is genuinely, completely fine. I don't know what Hollis is doing. I don't think about it very much. That surprised me at first. I thought I would think about it more, but it turns out that when something has taken up that much of your mental space for that long, when it finally resolves, the absence of it is enormous. All that space, all that quiet. I'm using it for myself now. That's the comeback. Not luxury, not revenge. Just mine. I keep thinking about that dish towel. The way I folded it, set it down, and said nothing. At the time I thought I was just stunned. Looking back, I think some part of me had already decided. I just hadn't caught up to it yet. There's a version of this story where I explode, where I throw something, or cry in front of him, or immediately call a lawyer while shaking. I've thought about that version. It would have felt good for about 40 minutes. Then I would have lost the house. What I've learned, not from a book, not from a podcast, just from living through it, is that how you respond to being hurt matters as much as the hurt itself. Hollis was counting on me to react. People who behave the way he did are almost always counting on the other person to react, because reaction is chaos, and chaos is cover. When I didn't give him that, when I just kept cooking dinner and going to work and asking how his shifts went, he assumed he was safe. He got comfortable. He got careless. And careless people leave receipts in jacket pockets. I'm not saying I was calculating. I was terrified most of those months. I cried in a garage. I sat with financial statements at midnight trying to understand what my own life was worth on paper. What I'm saying is that I chose, over and over, to think before I acted. That choice cost me a lot of sleep. It also saved me a significant amount of money and a house I love. My sister Portia told me early on, "Do you want to feel better right now, or do you want to actually fix it?" I've turned that question over in my mind so many times since. It sounds cold. It isn't. It's one of the most honest things anyone has ever said to me, because it named something real, that doing the right thing for yourself often doesn't feel good in the moment. Sitting on what you know, building your case quietly, letting a person think they've gotten away with something while you prepare. None of that is satisfying in the short term. It all pays out later. And it did pay out. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that makes a good scene, just in the way that I still live in my house and I have my finances intact, and I wake up every morning in a room I painted a color I chose, and the life I'm building now is mine in a way my life hasn't felt in years. I think about the woman I was before all of this, the one who drove 40 minutes each way to support someone else's vision of what our life should look like. I don't resent her. She was doing what she thought love asked of her, but I think she deserved someone who would have done the same. What this whole thing required of me wasn't strength in the way people usually talk about strength. It wasn't dramatic. It was quieter than that. The willingness to keep going when I was scared, to be honest with myself about what was actually happening, even when denial would have been easier, and to hold on to my own sense of what was right even when I was being told, implicitly, that I wasn't worth choosing. That last part is the one I'll carry longest. You cannot wait for someone else to decide you're worth choosing. At some point, you have to make that call yourself. I made mine when I folded the dish towel and said nothing. I just didn't know it yet.